Good morning. How's everyone? Welcome, Nicole. Nicole has just come through. I assumed that Nicole is part of Itai.
Nicole is Software AG, so is Tabo.
Tabo is part of Software AG as well. Welcome, Tabo. Welcome, Nicole. All other people we've engaged with, but officially, good morning, Rod.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chairperson.
We've got everyone from Software AG. You know, Software AG has dispatched 4 of their leadership. You know, so we've got thought leadership sitting in one place.
Very good, very good, very good. Thank you so much. Do you want me to lead in terms of the discussion, or are you going to just share maybe the PITA position, Sonabo?
Look, I think a quick one. Thank you, Rod. A quick one. Since the last time we talked, Itai, and I think with Archimedes. You know,
Archimedes,
my tongue.
Archimedes, that's the Greek
yeah.
not coming out in you, right?
Yeah, no, it's not coming up. The Greek in me is escaping. My apologies if I mispronounce. Since the last time that we met the first time when you guys assisted us with a masterclass, which we are still expecting it, by the way. We need to give it to our children or youth that we engage with. PITA has grown. We've stretched out of South Africa to as far as Ethiopia. You know, and we offer online training. Ethiopia, presently we're running a program on gig, what we call gig girl code. We're offering Python and some cybersecurity in Uganda, Malawi, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, and look, few African countries, and few are coming on board. So we've done a lot of things. We've had over 18 webinars already, these type of conversations. We've had about 12 of these conversations since February. So we've been hectic. So my boss is very hard on me. Rod sitting there, he wants every Tuesday, we need to be active. So we've done a lot, and we've partnered with lots of universities. The last university to come through as our partner is National University of Lesotho. And we've got many other advisors that have come on board, and I think it's a very impressive list. Without mentioning a lot, the ones that have come through the past 3 weeks, we've got a doctor from University of Tshwane, of Pretoria. You know, I always think of Tshwane because, you know, I stayed in Tshwane for a long time. Under the GIBS, the business side of the University of Pretoria, we've got Professor Darrell van Grienen, who she is with University of Nelson Mandela. And we've got Professor Raburifi with UJ. So look, as you can see, we're very strong. We're going forward, and we really appreciate you being here today. We are accessible on all social media platforms as we are talking now, as we're sitting here. It is live on our internet radio station. It is live on LinkedIn. It is live on YouTube and on Facebook. We've reduced one today because we can only do 3 at a go. So Twitter is out today. So we've got LinkedIn. I'm sure it is live now on LinkedIn as we're talking, and all others I know. So that's what we're doing. And for people who don't, like Nicole and Tabo, there's many other activities that we do except conversations within PITA. I've mentioned already the online training that we offer. We are certified with, we're a partner of Cisco, and we are a CompTIA approved partner. And we are stretching to get other OEMs to come on board so that we share with the unemployed, the students or youth that are in universities, all the good things that the OEMs offer. I'll refer it as good things, and Itai will, and you guys will crystallize it, what is good things. So I think from my side, briefly, that's what I think I can share with you today. Any other information, I'm more than happy to share the profile for PITA. I'll send it to Itai, then Itai can distribute it internally. Thank you, Rod. Up to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sonabo. Thank you very much. A big warm welcome to Itai, Thabo, Nicole, and Archimedes, and also all of our online listeners and viewers. We are grateful that you could spend some time with us. We are also very privileged to have Software AG here today. Obviously, I want to thank Software AG's the management and the leadership, Koliwe and her team, to actually allow her people some time to spend with us and actually share. We're having a very interesting topic this morning, which is around health technology. And we're going to actually talk and discuss about all of the aspects. Now, when you look at health technology, just as a brief introduction, health technology is the fourth component of health provision, along with all the health practitioners, the facilities, and the pharmaceuticals. So the term health technology encompasses both medical devices from a relatively simple, such as syringes, to the complex high-tech devices such as MRI and resonance imaging machines, medical technologies, and basic software. And this is where we actually wanted to tap in and afford Software AG the opportunity to come and share with us and tell us what is the type of thing that they're currently doing in health technology, some of the integration areas, some of the lay of the land, some of the environments in terms of some of the technologies that they have, who they partner with, who they work with. And obviously, it's a very big space. Outside of education, health is the second biggest budget recipient from every year from the fiscus. So it's an important aspect. It's a very critical aspect. It's in dire straits. And I'm not going to talk about the politics here today. For those other listeners, we're not going to talk about the 800 people that are going to be dismissed because COVID sort of has gone through the phases. We're not going to talk about Charlotte Maxeke Hospital that obviously had the burn down. We're not here to actually discuss that. We're not going to talk about the bad situation and what we've seen, pregnant women lying on the floors in hospitals and what's happening in Baragwana. We are not here to discuss the political aspects. We rather want to share and give Software AG an opportunity to share with us what is the type of thing that they're doing in health technology. And without further ado, I'm going to afford an opportunity for Itai just to lay the land and just give us a platform or just give us a landscape in terms of how our discussions will flow through. Thanks, Itai. Over to you.
Thanks, Rodney. Thanks, Sonabo. I think for us, it's an honor to be here. I think we love gracing such platforms where we can communicate with our youth. Sonabo, you would be aware that one of the big things that we're driving in Software AG is the enablement of the youth. Because I think for us, that's the future. That's the future of the country. Not only South Africa, but that's the future of the continent as well. And the more we reach out to those youth and the more we enable them to go out and be innovative, to go out and be productive, to go out and participate in the economies of this continent, the better we will all turn out to be. So I think for Software AG, allow me to just give a quick introduction of who we are. And I will also introduce one of the participants that's here that's going to also share in the knowledge of what we as Software AG are doing in the healthcare sector. And before I go into detail, I just want to put a disclaimer here. We are not standing here or sitting here as e-health specialists, but rather we are taking it from a technology perspective and trying to discuss what technology is being brought to the fore in the provision of healthcare in the industry. And I think that's what's important, and that's where we play a major role. So Software AG, we are a 53-year-old company, so we are not that young. We are much older than you, Sonabo, I guess. And we've been around. We are data pioneers. We are founded on the understanding and belief that data is going to become the new gold. And trust me, if we look at what's happening now, that's almost being realized. Let's take a look back. February 2019, when the onset of the pandemic was. I think we had our lockdown in March or somewhere there. But what did people scramble for? What did companies scramble for? What did governments scramble for? They did not scramble for hospitals. They did not scramble for doctors. They did not scramble for healthcare facilities. They scrambled for information, because that information was the foundation that told them where the hospitals are, how equipped the hospitals were, what medication was at what hospital, who was infected, and all the contact and trace technology that came immediately after that was to enable people to know exactly how to respond to what had just happened to the world. So information is very important, and Software AG having been found on the basis that data is going to become the new gold. I think we were right on the mark, and it's coming to being realized now. So with the pandemic, there's a couple of things also that came to the fore that I just want to table now, because those are the things that we're going to be talking about in this conversation. And I welcome any questions and interruptions if there's any need for elaboration on those particular things, because we are technology people. We are going to be talking technology and how that technology is impacting the healthcare systems. Remote monitoring and of both patients and drugs became a key thing, because we were trying, and by we I'm talking about all of us. We're trying to avoid that direct contact with each other, because we never knew, we didn't know who was infected or not. Remote diagnostics, um, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all those technologies were brought to the fore, because the system was trying to minimize that contact, which was understandable at that point in time. So that's all technology driven. So this is what makes us excited at Software AG, because this is the space we play, and this is the things that we do on a daily basis. We enable those clients or those enterprises to become truly connected. And by truly connected, I mean we orchestrate the flow of information between any entities that consume information within the enterprises and outside of the enterprises. And that's where our core capabilities of integration come in, because we allow for that information to go through, but not only move through, but in a secure fashion as well, which is very important, especially in healthcare. You talk of patient information. That's critical information. That's personal information. That's information that needs to be secured. And we recently had our own law, POPI, amalgamated and coming into effect now. That's very critical, because what it says or what it talks to is you cannot share information unnecessarily, and you can only hold information about individuals if you are doing something that they've been notified about, that they've agreed to. So this is very important. Healthcare information is key. So this is where we play a Software AG a major role. So I just want now that we hopefully you're all aware of who Software AG is, that we've been around for 53 years, that we help with connecting enterprise we help with helping enterprises become digitally connected. We help with their digital transformations. Let me introduce Archimedes, who's also on the call, who's from Software AG. Archimedes is our business solutions architect, and he will also be contributing on how technology is helping in the healthcare space. Archimedes, morning to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I think with healthcare and the technology that technology can play in healthcare, we have a great opportunity to really utilize our resources as best we can. And I think one of the things we have to understand about technology and the value it provides is that it gives us capacity that we might currently not have. In form of, as we mentioned, artificial intelligence, maybe robotics, but really it is about the understanding where the data comes from and how we can use it timelessly to make, in the case of healthcare, life-saving decisions. And understanding that whole ecosystem and how everything is connected is really part of the solutions that we can help with.
Thanks, Archimedes, and I think you chip in as we go along. Thanks for that. So for Software AG, one of the things that we realized very early on is that technology and healthcare have always gone hand in hand. I mean, you cannot separate them. A modern hospital today, which is not always the case with our situation in South Africa and in the rest of the African continent, but certainly there are pockets of areas where there are those modern hospitals that are now in place. And a modern hospital today, or even a local clinic, is packed with high technology, high tech equipment. And Rodney mentioned some of the stuff that's in there: your MRI scans, your diagnostic machines that we see these days, and all those are high tech equipment. And clearly, it is with the understanding that it's not everywhere, but it's available, and it has become, in recent years, it has become affordable. So not only is it now the preserve of the first world, but it's also applicable in the third world or in the developing world as we know it today. So we have always understood, or we've always recognized that technology is an integral part of delivering healthcare services, and as such, we have taken a position to play a major role in making sure that the technology that we develop, the technology that we put in the market, is technology that's used and used effectively in delivering that services. I just want to share with you some facts where technology comes in, where healthcare is concerned. I think the first sequencing of human genome, one of the greatest medical achievements, and we will all agree, um, in the last century, cost about $3 billion just to do that sequencing of the human genome. Less than a decade later, that same sequencing costs just over 50,000 US dollars. In today's environment, that sequencing is done within hours, and it costs just about $600. So what does it tell you? Technology is progressing. But what we're getting out of technology is also very key. We are now getting to doing those diagnoses much sooner, much faster. And as Akmida said, being able to respond and manage that patient quicker. And it's all because of the technology that we have today. And that's very important for us. And I think that's what we are going to expand on. So we'll touch on some of the emerging technologies. But what we are going to hone into today, which is where we as Software AG are playing a very major role, and in particular where we are helping a lot of service providers in the healthcare industry, is what we call IoT. And I know some of you might ask, IoT, yeah, that's just an acronym, and it's maybe an in thing. So I'll give you a textbook definition of what IoT is. So the Internet of Things, known as IoT in short, is a system of interrelated computing devices. They could be mechanical, they could be digital machines, but more importantly, they could be any objects, animals, people. In short, I think an encompassing term is things. So it's interrelated things that in their own right, they've got a unique ID and produce data, which data can be transferred across the network. So that's what the Internet of Things is. It's interrelated things that produce data, and that data is transmitted across the networks. And when we talk of people and animals being part of the Internet of Things, I'm talking of animals that have got devices in them. I'm talking of people that have got devices in them. And I'm talking of machines that have got devices in them. And it's those devices that monitor that particular object, that object being a person, being an animal, being a machine. It's those devices that monitor that object and produce the data that then gets transferred across a network, across the internet, to software or to other technologies that then analyze that data. And out of that analysis come the outcomes that we look into. So that's where technology is playing a role, and that's where the Internet of Things is playing a role. And we as Software AG are one of those major producers of Internet of Things platforms. And we looked at it from a platform perspective because for us, it's not just there to solve one particular thing. And when we roll out the Internet of Things as companies, we don't always know what's coming tomorrow, but we want to lay a platform that enables us to deal with what's coming tomorrow, to deal with what we don't know today, but could be upon us tomorrow. And that's what we as Software AG help companies with. We provide that technology, we provide that platform that we are working with our companies to do, with our customers to do. So yes, Rodney.
Can I just interject there for a minute? I think it's important that maybe if there's anyone that wants to actually make comments or add to that, to have the opportunity to do that. I think what is important, I like what you've said. I'm really keen on that. It really speaks volumes in terms of Software AG and leaps and bounds in terms of how you've grown along, especially in terms of Internet of Things and the artificial intelligence and the robotics for that. I want you to actually bring it down to a more simpler version. In other words, bring it down, that Internet of Things, in terms of maybe your electronic health records, or maybe your telemedicine, or maybe your web surveillance in terms of technology, and give us a few examples of maybe it may not be in South Africa, it could be anywhere in the world, but some of those examples where those practical Software AG types of health technology instruments are actually utilized, how it's utilized, what benefit does it actually bring towards some of those users, which is the servants or the citizens in the street, and what impact did it actually have, and how innovative that actually pushes towards some more things to do for that, if you don't mind.
Okay, Rodney. No, absolutely not. I think in order for me to address that, Rodney, and which is what my next step was, let me share with you how we as Software AG have approached it. So what we have done in the healthcare space is to say there are 4 key industry themes that we need to address. Firstly is the patient experience. So one of the key players in the healthcare is the patient, because that's the subject of interest, right? So what is the patient experience? How do we improve that patient journey as they go through the healthcare system? How do we improve the way they are treated? How do we improve the way they feel? How do we improve the way they interact or interface with the various role players in that space? The second thing, which is the electronic health that you touched on, is the digital transformation. How do we ensure that we create that electronic record? I mean, as we digitize, in most cases for most companies, it's becoming imperative that most health records become digital. And I'll give you examples of that. I recall last year with my colleague Akmidis, we're talking to some doctors. And one of the doctors was from Cape Town, and we're talking about technology and how it impacts what they do. And he said, and unfortunately so in our circumstances in this country, he said his surgery was robbed. So his practice was robbed. And what the perpetrators did was to take and destroy all the records that he had on for his patients. So you can imagine that's a calamity on its own. That's life history of a particular patient that's gone in a flash, simply because someone is criminal. And if that had been digitized, there would have been other layers of security or of securing that information that would have been introduced. So that doctor lost those patient history, and he had to rebuild. So he had to rebuild out of memory, out of what he could know and think about the patient as they revisited. But again, that's a travesty, because now we don't know what's happening. So digitization of that electronic that patient record is very key. Then the other thing that we look at as we introduce the Internet of Things is the healthcare disruption. How do we respond? How do we respond quickly to what's happening in the environment? If a patient presents with certain symptoms, and we at that particular point in time cannot address those symptoms, how do we respond? How do we communicate with people that could potentially address this? And that's where the telemedicine comes in. How can we share that patient information with someone potentially outside of South Africa, maybe in the US, maybe in the Asia Pacific? How can we share that particular patient information, and within a matter of minutes, within a matter of hours, be able to apply and address the prevailing conditions for that patient so that they feel better. Then the last theme that we look at is the digital health business. How are we making the relevant players within the health sector play and participate together? Because it's about cooperation, it's about collaboration, it's about sharing information. So in the healthcare space, there are two extremes. You have the patient, who's the, as I put it, who's the subject of interest, but you also have the clinician at the far end. But in between, there are a lot of role players. You've got your medical aid players. You've got your for most of the African families, you've got your providers, your caregivers, which could be family that pay for your healthcare services if you're going to do that. Then you've got the device suppliers, you've got the medicine suppliers, and you've got a whole lot of people in between the clinician who's trying to address the problem that the patient has got. And the key thing is that the information of whatever happens in between and between those two ends flows and flows seamlessly, so that the right action is taken at the right time and the right responses are done or are made at the right time. And again, that's where our digital integration hub comes in, because we facilitate or we orchestrate that flow of information. So in simple terms, a patient presents with information, we need to be able to identify what that is, and we need to be called on all the relevant people or all the relevant parties that can help with addressing that, whether they are right in front of us, whether they are within a hospital or whether they are outside of that particular hospital or outside of the country. What becomes key is that there is need for connectivity, which is lacking in most of the African continents. I think that's where one of our major challenges are. Are we truly connected from an internet perspective, from a network perspective? Do we have the right infrastructure in the rural areas? Do we have the right infrastructure in the urban areas? And do we have the right infrastructure across the continent to be able to participate in providing the best healthcare service we can to the people that require it? And those are some of the simple things that we look at. I mean, we wake up every morning and we take things for granted.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
when something happens, that's when you realize, oh, but this is actually not in place, and we need to be looking at that.
Thanks.
And I'm
That
sorry,
was
Rodney.
very well explained. I like that. I like that. You actually gave us three. You unpacked three of the most important aspects of those points. We know, you and I know, and everybody else and everybody that's listening or watching this knows that in South Africa, our healthcare and the technology aspect of that is highly unequal. You know, because we have the private sector and we have the public sector, and the public sector is those hospitals, Steve Biko General Hospital in Pretoria, Chris Hani Baragwanath, etc. Those technologies, those healthcare technologies that you're talking about, when will they reach those public sector hospitals so that our grannies and gogos and booties can actually benefit out of that? Because there is and I'm sure yourself and the rest of the other members will talk about the affordability of it as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's a highly unequal society we live in. You know, 10% of the population has the benefit of private healthcare, medical aid schemes, and 80 to 90% are dependent on public hospitals.
Yeah.
And the rural areas are dependent on community-led clinics, and these clinics are led through sisters and midwives and nurses, and there's very few doctors or specialists in there because it's publicly funded. So I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just saying, hoping that this healthcare technologies, this AI, when will it reach Boma, Helen Joseph, Charlotte Maxeke, you know, Lillian Ngoyi, Steve Biko General Hospital in Pretoria, to get to that level where our citizens can benefit and get a share out of that as well? An unfair question towards you, but I'm hoping that
It is, Rodney, but I think it's an important question all the same. I think without overstepping into areas that I don't have control over, or we as SoftEdge don't have control over because we're technologists, there are a lot of role players in getting to what you are requesting, in getting to that technology being available at the very lowest level of the communities that we have in South Africa. So there are governments, there are NGOs, there are technology providers that all need to work together to say, how can we enable this? How can we make sure that we provide this at an affordable cost? One thing that I can tell you from a technology perspective is certainly that the cost of technology is coming down. That's a given. You and I have been in the industry for some time. We know when we started, the cost of disk was probably sky high. These days, storage space is as cheap as can be. I mean, it's still sold, but it's very much affordable. Look at the cost of data coming down now in our country, which is very much encouraged. But again, it's through the participation and the collaboration of industry, of government, of various sectors to say, how can we make it affordable for our people? So the technology is there. The technology is there. No, make no mistake about it. But the affordability is a question that comes in when people collaborate, when organizations collaborate, when different entities collaborate.
Absolutely. That's good. Thank you so much, Itai. Much appreciated for that. Let's afford maybe an opportunity to either Eugene, welcome Eugene, Kamogelo is there, and Archimedes, or even Sunabo, if there's any questions or any queries that you guys want to actually share with us.
Put these. Eric, are you there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Oh,
Go ahead.
wait, something's not right here.
Kamogelo, we can
Kamogelo,
hear
we can
you.
hear you.
I think let's go ahead to the next person while she sorts herself out.
Okay, of course.
So I think maybe I can also come in here. I think today, especially in medicine, we are becoming more connected as people. We all have smartphones. At least most of us have smartphones. If not smartphones, we do have some sort of communication device, which means we can reach out and receive a service. If we have smartphones, that smartphone device is a device that can do a lot for us. We can reach out for a service. We can get remote diagnosis. We can connect a device to that smartphone that can maybe monitor our health, blood pressure or blood sugar or whatever it is in our homes. So we can take some of the pressure off the infrastructure as such. You mentioned all those hospitals and when is this technology coming in, and it is a pity because in these hospitals we have probably some of the best doctors in the country. We've got some of the best minds, and yet we're not empowering them. And to be able to empower them is really to give them access to the technology that we are talking about, giving them access to the data that is available. And for them to be able to be assisted in making the right decisions as quickly as possible. And all this technology is now not necessarily has to be held within the hospital itself. We're all aware that cloud technology is becoming very prolific. And how can that also participate in the infrastructure of these hospitals? So it can be a shared resource in more ways than one. So not just the data, but also the access could be a shared platform, which again brings down the cost of use of this technology down tremendously. What we're also seeing in the software environment is that the licensing models, how this technology is acquired by companies, is changing, and it's becoming more aligned against the value that companies or organizations get from the technology rather than what a software vendor wants to get out of it for its shareholders. So it is the alignment is happening where it's becoming more realistic in terms of implementing these technologies across both public and private sector. You mentioned that there's a disparity between public and private healthcare. The reality in private healthcare, there's still a huge gap that can be filled with the technology that's available. Healthcare isn't becoming digitized as quickly as it should. There's so much value to be had in having the information available to the clinician at their fingertips, where they can make decisions, and even those decisions can even potentially be automated. For example, if I'm monitoring your heart and your oxygen intake and your blood pressure with machines, how do I accumulate this and allow an algorithm to show me that there's something going wrong? How do I utilize the huge amount of data that exists within the world that show me these patterns and the reaction I should have to these patterns, rather than allowing this information to only be available to specialists who look at it individually and don't get a holistic view. So even in the private sector, this is not where it should be. And once the private sector takes it up, the cost as well will even come down further than it currently is. As Itai mentioned, the cost of this technology has been coming down. The cost of delivering a service has been coming down. We have connectivity. We have wearables. Some of us might be wearing an Apple Watch that can monitor our blood pressure. If we are at risk of some illness through blood pressure, that can alert my doctor automatically, and my doctor can make me aware that I need to change my medication, or I need to slow down, or whatever it is I need to do. These are all things that an intelligence platform, something like the Internet of Things and analytics, can take care of, right now. It's just getting these in place and having the confidence that the data is going to be secure, the data is going to be used appropriately for the benefit of the patient on the one side, and for the effectiveness of the clinician on the other.
Yeah,
So
Archimedes, if I may
maybe-
just add to what he just said. Eugene, did you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, very quickly. I think also going back to, taking these things to the lower levels, I think we all agree that it's not something that can happen overnight, and obviously there's cost associated with it. But I think it should be mentioned that the thinking is there and if I could comment from a software AG perspective, if you take other sectors, education or training of people, we're actively, through CSI initiatives, looking at, rolling out labs so that we can get, as an example, students to go and learn there and practice things. So those are the forward-thinking things that can be done maybe in the medical sector as well. And I think with IoT, there's so many things out there. And the focus should be with tackling, one small thing at a time instead of looking at a bigger picture. And this can only happen also in a consultative, process with governments or departments. And I think with those active collaborations, that's how we could have these discussions and look at ways and strategies to start, implementing these things in smaller chunks at a time, perhaps. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Eugene, for that. I just want to add to what Archimedes was talking about when he brought in the concept of Internet of Things. And one of the key things that we are seeing driven by technology is what is known as the digital twin. And this plays a major role in the proactiveness in dealing with potential issues with a particular patient. And what a digital twin is basically, it's a replica of a human being. And because we can now store massive amounts of data, it's very possible, and it can be done at a cost-effective price, that replica is what then the machine learning technology, the artificial intelligence technology would then look at. Currently, if you are say on medication, chronic medication for most of the people that are above 50, I mean, you find yourself getting into that space quite easily. Most of us that are on chronic medication, you find yourself, you determine the dosage and the changes in that medication when you go to your doctor, and you probably do that every 6 months and maybe every year, where the doctor can look at it. But at that point, at that juncture, it could be after the fact. Something might already have gone wrong drastically, and the medication, the dosage can be changed. But with the digital twin, with artificial intelligence and machine learning, that technology can be looking into the future and proactively detect what could happen 6 months down the line, and advise the relevant authorities, the relevant clinicians, to say this action should be taken now to be preventative. And I think this is a key concept that's coming into the medical field. It's a key concept that's coming into the healthcare sector, that's helping with how we use technology and how we can effectively treat people. I just wanted to introduce that because it's all related to the Internet of Things. It's all related to artificial intelligence. It's all related to machine learning that we touched on briefly.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Itai. That's good. That was good. And Eugene, thanks for your input. Really appreciate that. That is good, and it's good to participate. So Nabo, you about to ask a question or make a comment? I'm going to just afford you the time.
Rod, no, I'm happy so far. It's going very well, the conversation, so I'm fine.
All right, fantastic.
It's been addressed. Thanks.
Itai, there's an area that I thought maybe yourself or Archimedes or maybe even Eugene can maybe just share with us. The current market for medical technology in South Africa is still dominated by what we call the traditional devices. So it's estimated that probably 80 to 90% of the medical technology currently used in SA is imported. And combining this figure, import data, there's a big market for about 350 billion, 400 billion. That's the 2018, 2019, and 2020 numbers. This is from Department of Health and also from the World Health Organization. So a lot of these equipments, a lot of these goodies, the medical instruments and devices, the orthopedic appliances, the electronic imaging devices, therapy, breathing, and microscopes, a lot of these are imported devices in terms of health technology. And obviously it becomes an expensive commodity. I'm not sure if you were prepared for this, or how you mentioned earlier how this new AI and robotics and artificial intelligence and Internet of Things makes it a lot more affordable. However, we're still spending a lot of money on technology devices, and a lot of those are imported. I don't know where Software AG is in this respect. And here I'm talking about the technology around those particular devices. Can you maybe just share with us on that, if you can?
So Rodney, we as Software AG don't produce devices per se, but there's one thing that Eugene touched on that's very important that we as Software AG are doing. We are creating a learning environment for our youth. We are creating those laboratories. We are standing up those laboratories in different provinces. The whole idea behind that is to enable our youth to be innovative. So in as much as today we might not have those devices or those technologies being produced in South Africa, we are pretty certain that in 10, 15 years time, we will have some stuff coming out of South Africa, and that will bring down the cost tremendously. I mean, if we look at other things, quite honestly, I believe there are people that are producing devices in South Africa that we might not have interacted with them, but this platform that we're providing, the labs, the schools, the centers of excellence that we are providing, are those platforms where this innovation is meant to come out of. And I think that's our participation as Software AG in this economy.
Well said. Archimedes, you want to comment on that?
I do want to add something to it, and this is nothing necessarily to do with Software AG, but in our explorations within the space, if I can call it that, we have discovered that in South Africa we do have a lot of we have a lot of innovations coming out of South Africa. And this, I think, Rodney, touches on a point you made earlier, and that is that we're not investing in this. We're not investing in these innovations. So one of the things that we invented as South Africans a few years ago was a full body X-ray. So a machine that can do a full body X-ray in an instant. So you take one X-ray, you've got the whole body, and you can, almost like an MRI, but an X-ray. We couldn't, as South Africans, we couldn't find investors, and we had to go outside to get investment. And now we buy that machine from an overseas supplier, even though we've invented it. And there's a number of similar products. The technology that used to shape your lens when you grow old and you need to, you don't want to wear glasses like I do, and you can go and get your eyes shaped. That a lot of the technology came out of this country many years ago, 20, 30 years ago, but there was never investment from local investors. So I think one of the gaps we have in the healthcare industry is that we have a whole lot of scientists, engineers who have the ability to invent things, but we don't have the financial backing from either government
to be able to support that. I hear you. That is very important.
To bring in the money.
We are blessed with a lot of innovators and inventors and engineers and designers, but it always so happens that they have to go outside, and then they come and sell our own product back to us.
100%.
It's a sad reality.
That's a very sad reality.
I have one more comment or questions that I just want to maybe share. I'll put through to both yourself, Archimedes, Eugene, and Itai. What are some of, we spoke about this, and we touched on one aspect now, which is obviously the lack of resources, and here it's financial resources to be able to really take advantage of the health technology and bring that product to our citizens at an affordable rate. But what are the other barriers that you see that is preventing this implementation of health technology? What else outside of just the resource, which is the financial aspect? What else is there? And here I'm referring to perhaps maybe regulatory or user resistance, or maybe bureaucratic decision making, or the act or the medical, etc. What in your mind, from a software AG point of view, are some of those barriers that are putting big hurdles and mountains in front of you that sort of really puts a spanner in the works in terms of health technology and your drive towards that? Maybe just share on that. And that would be my last question. Then I'll hand over to Sonabo.
Yeah, well, maybe I can kick off that. Rodney, you mentioned a lot of the things, but I cannot say directly it's affecting us as software AG in terms of our participation to make sure that we move or we go on this journey with the nation in terms of developing in that space. But certainly there are hurdles that we can talk about, even if they are not necessarily affecting us. You mentioned some of them. Regulations. Are the regulations open enough to allow participation in the industry? Are the regulations open enough to allow for the protection of innovation? So Archimedes was talking of companies that innovate, but because they don't have the financial muscle, or South Africa as a nation, we don't have the financial muscle, they end up going outside to get that investment. And that particular IP is then taken outside of the country and come in as we become consumers of our own innovation, right? We don't become those people that nurture that innovation and grow it. We become consumers, which is bad. If that protection can be provided, then it will be good. Then people will go in knowing that if I do this, if I patent my technology, the whole host of stakeholders are behind me in terms of protecting that as a South African innovation, even if it means we need to figure out how to finance the progression of that particular innovation. We do it locally. I think for me, that would be key. I don't know if you want to add anything on that.
The only thing is that the medical sector is also quite hesitant, if I can call it that, to move into technologies that they don't necessarily understand. And when we come to information technologies, these are new technologies for the medical sector, and there's a hesitancy. So I'm not sure if that is, and of course there are exceptions to that, and we have had some very meaningful conversations with some, but a lot of doctors they don't want to depend on information technology, if I can call it that. Technology, yes, but information technology is what we are talking about. Data, integration, artificial intelligence. These are things that they're very hesitant to adopt as part of their ecosystem of delivering their service.
Yeah, I can agree to that. There's what we call the user resistance. The success of many of these technologies depends on the levels of adoption, by either the health practitioners or maybe by the patients or the consumers. If you have a doctor that's been practicing medicine for the last 40 years, he still wants to use the blood pressure machine that you pumps up. He's not going to say, listen, give me that new technology where you can just put the strap around and buzz it up. Or even I can imagine, especially now in the pandemic period, where you had to do your PCR test when they put that little long thing through your nose. The old gogo, she's going to refuse for you to be able to do that. So there is this level of adoption. You need to be able to have that level as well. There's a reluctance maybe to move to new ways. But I just thought maybe let me just ask some of those. It's not particularly focused on software AG, as Itai had said, but it's a general user acceptance, financing constraint, lack of appropriate solutions, the bureaucratic decision making, all of those regulatory, the acts, etc., etc. But nevertheless, that is my part. I don't know if there are any questions or queries, anything from the online chat, or maybe Sonwabo, you want to comment on that, and then I'll hand over to you. Then you can close off and give maybe the last words through to Itai. Thanks, Sonwabo.
Thank you, Rod. Yeah. And look, all the points that have been raised, or all the issues that have been raised, it's nice to hear. But what's important, I think, to ask is it a reluctance caused by competency, caused by knowledge, caused by lots of things that influence the non-adoption? There's a lot of things that influences non-adoption. Are we doing enough? And this is not software AG. Are we doing enough in the IT space or ICT space to disseminate that information so that people are comfortable in their skin and they're able to adopt these new technologies or emerging technologies? That's a discussion, I think, on its own. And if Itai or
Archimedes.
Thank you. Wants to respond to that.
Please don't expose now the Eastern Cape's limitation in terms of
my brother, the Xhosa factor. The tongue is tight. So maybe you need to shed some light, because for me, we do these conversations every time. We've talked to numerous people. We've engaged with different people in different countries. And one of as I'm saying to you, is it ignorance? Is it lack of know-how? Is it competency? Is it capacity to understand? Is there willingness to unlearn and learn? Those are very critical questions as we go. And how do we reverse, if any of the ones that I've raised are an impediment, then how do we reverse that, or how do we address it?
Yeah, so now I think that's a very important point you raise. Yes, lack of knowledge. I don't think it's necessarily lack of knowledge per se, but lack of information sharing by the people that hold the information could be playing a major role in providing this deficit that you are seeing in the market, to say, are people doing the right things with the right technology and all that kind of thing. As Software AG, I think we've been open right from the start that we're here to share knowledge. We're here to share information. We're here to create that awareness of how technology can be used within this space. And at any point, we are open to any conversations, any debates, any innovative engagements where we can interact with any role players that have got a role, any stakeholders that have got a role to play in this particular industry. So sharing of information, absolutely, and for the vendors that are out there, for the service providers that are out of there, I think the time for competing for the sake of competing is gone. I think it's now the time of collaboration for the greater good, and that's where we find ourselves in, where we want to collaborate with people that mean well. We want to collaborate with entities that mean well, and make sure that ultimately at the end of the day, we all benefit as a nation. That's why we've got all the programs that Eugene touched on, where we are doing our CSI initiatives. We're doing our um, enablement of schools and youth in different provinces, because we believe with these youth, with these youngsters, we've got a future. We all have a future. I mean, I don't want to leave my future when I'm not able to participate or partake in the economy. I don't want to leave it in the hands of people that don't know what they're doing, that have not been exposed to what potentially could be a good life for me. I think that's my comment from a personal perspective.
If I could add to that as well, I think
Please do, sir.
the way forward for ICT, in my mind, is creating ecosystems where a lot of role players can collaborate to deliver value to the end consumer, if I can call it that. And that's no different in healthcare as it is in anything. So if we look across the ICT, the biggest users of ICT is the financial industry, and we're already seeing things like fintechs, which is an ecosystem environment where banks and third parties work together to deliver a solution. The same thing should be happening in healthcare, and I think it is about, like Itai said, it is about the lack of knowledge, not ignorance, but the lack of knowledge. But it is an environment where we as innovators in the space have a responsibility to share that with the consumers of this technology. So it is part of our responsibility to educate the market into the possibilities of the emerging capabilities in technology. So we have definitely as service providers, as software developers, as whatever we are in the space, we have a responsibility to educate, but also to educate in a ecosystem environment rather than just what our little thing does within that ecosystem, because the benefit will come from participation within it, not isolation within it.
Thank you. Eugene, anything?
Yeah, maybe to add to what Itai and Archimedes have said, I think, like with everything, people want to see, feel, and touch things, to know what it actually does for them and to see the benefits of it. And I think it's all about communication. There's always this old adage when we run projects, we say, tell them what you told them and show them. And I think once they can touch and feel and see what this is about, then I think people will have less resistance to actually try these new things out. And I think what Archimedes said is paramount, in that it can't be done by one sector only. I mean, as Software AG, we can talk about IoT and provide the software, but it needs to be an industry collaboration. As an example, let's take telco and software as an example, to help the citizens with the cost of data, so that they can run these apps on their smartphones, as an example, to make use of these data sets that we've talked about, and look at data on their apps on their phones and stuff. So we all need to enable the public, and to help them to reduce costs, so that they can actually take on these products and start actually using them. Yeah.
Thank you, Eugene. As Archimedes and Eugene and Itai, you can see it's all in the mind. I can say your name. It's all in the mind. Look, we understand and we appreciate. And I think to wrap up and just to say, I think thank you very much. We really appreciate your presence today. And Software AG, I think it's very important for us to cover this. It actually supported us on our first year of existence when we had a hackathon. They believed in what we were doing, even though they did not know who PyCTA was. So it's always appreciated your support, and we are looking forward to working very closely with you as we go forward, as the organization is developing. There's a lot of things that I'm going to discuss with Itai before he goes on leave, so that he takes it with and he can grind on the things. So thank you very much, Archimedes. Thank you very much, Eugene. Thank you for the time. I think it will be amiss if I don't say thank you very much to your leadership. Coley has really released you guys. You're spending an hour with us, and the video that we've got, it has been streamed to all social media, and it will be consumed later by people who are going to benefit a lot from it. And we always appreciate, and we are looking forward to the masterclass, which will form part of our library, and we will share it with the universities that we work with, which are quite a few now, right across the continent. And thank you very much from my side, from PyCTA.
Thank you.
Thank you. Baya danki. Kia lebucha ndiabulela.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the platform. And more importantly, I hope the listeners have benefited from what we had to say.
Itai, please, 1 second before you go. Don't go. I'll 2 seconds with you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.